Hey everybody, Zeal Brothers here with another video. This one in response to Serena Williams. You guys may not know, but Venus and Serena are not the only children of King Richard. And Serena Williams is mad because she's part of the first set of kids that Mr. Richard Williams had. And so when you look at this, basically Serena and Venus's dad, he had a family first. With another lady, and then he left her, and then he had another family, and that's the family that he had, Venus and Serena. And so Serena is from the first pack of kids, and she is really upset about this movie King Richard because it doesn't highlight the family that he left behind. It doesn't tell the full story, and in her opinion, he abandoned his family. So let's just talk a little bit about this, because in reality, what we have here is a problem that is common in the Black community. And the reason that it is common is because we have a lot of divorces in the Black community, and we have a lot of single parent households. But why do we have so many single parent households? We have them because in a lot of cases, only one story is being told. And I'll just say this just flat out. A lot of times we will hear women will come with their victim story. And they'll say, this man was no good. He was this, he was that. He was terrible. He wouldn't pay for anything. He wouldn't do this, he wouldn't do that. And then they abandon that man and they badmouth that man. And then they say, he wouldn't be a father. He wouldn't do this, he wouldn't do that. Meanwhile, they're the ones who had a baby with him. They chose him. And that's problematic, because a lot of times what we have in our community is we have a lot of women who want to have unprotected sex with these men. But then when the men don't match up to what they want, they bash the men. But the problem is not necessarily the men. Even though the men are a problem, the problem is you, because there are good men out there. And I'll just give you an example. When I was younger and I was going to get my college degree, and I was getting educated and I was training, I didn't necessarily have all this money to do all this fresh clothes that all these other dudes was doing. But the girls wanted these hood dudes who had this swag. Now, I had my own swag, but the point is that lots of these girls didn't want somebody like me. They didn't want nobody who they could think was a square. And so they didn't want a good man. Even members of my own family would say things like, well, I don't know, he kind of square, or you acting white. That was a common thing. You acting white. And when in reality, what them saying you acting white, it reflected a self-hating attitude. And that's what we have in our society. We have a lot of men and women in the Black community who hate themselves. When you describe good characteristics and people that look like you as naturally belonging to some other culture or race, you hate your community. When you take the bad behavior of yourself and instead of accepting responsibility for your own decisions, put it on somebody else, you hate them and you deny your own agency. And in the Black community, we have a lot of problem with this. We have a lot of problem with agency. What do I mean by agency? Agency is the ability to make free choices on your own. And we all have that ability. But with freedom will also come responsibility. And I'm not trying to quote a movie when I say that. It's just simply true. Freedom should be matched with responsibility. But what do a lot of people do? They'll say something like, the man did this, or men do this, or women do that. And you hear a lot of blame shifting. And in reality, the reason that we are in the position that we are in is always in the mirror. Always. Now, can unfortunate things happen to anybody? Yes, they can. But unfortunate things happen to everybody. And how you respond to that reflects what kind of person you are. And a greater person is able to take misfortunes and rise above them where a lesser person cannot. There are people who are greater than me and they have circumstances that are less than me and did more than I've done. And all I can do, I can say, well, they had this, they had that. I can blame shift all I want. But at the end of the day, the reason that I didn't make it to where I want to be will always be me. And the only thing that I can do to make my dreams come true is to change me. I have to change. I have to accept my own responsibility. And we have a problem with accepting responsibility. You know, Mos Def said this line in one of his raps. He's one of my favorite rappers. And he said, still living like mental slaves. Chasing after death just to call ourselves brave. And the whole line, he said a lot of things in that song, and some of them were deep. But the point is that when you act like somebody else, all their decisions are what matter in your life, you acting like a mental slave. And a lot of people may legally be free, but in their minds, they're still slaves. Now, spiritually, we understand why that is. The Bible says, to what a man obeys, to that he is overcome. Or another way of putting it is, to what you choose to serve, you will be enslaved by. If you choose to serve alcohol, you will create a dependence on yourself and alcohol. Whatever you choose to serve, it will become your master. But the problem is that at one point you do choose to serve. And so we can only blame ourselves. So looking at this story on Serena Williams, the truth of the matter is that King Richard will never tell the whole story, because it's going to try to make a feel-good movie about Venus and Serena Williams and their dad. That's what the point of the story is. No story will tell the whole story. Just like you don't have parts in the story where somebody is sitting there in the bathroom taking a painful crap. The reason is because, yes, did that happen? Yes, but it is not the part of the story that we want to reflect. Every story is going to pick and choose from parts of somebody's life to create the story that we want to create, to send the message that we want to send. That's every story. There is no story that doesn't cut out something. And so when you look at this story and say, is it the whole truth? It ain't the whole truth. Is it going to reflect your pain? No, but that's not the point of this story. And for a lot of people, they can't accept the fact that their story is not part of this story. In other words, it's not about them. And that may be hurtful to you. You may think you should be part of this story, but that's not what this story is about. It's not your story. And if you want to make your own story, unfortunately, you're going to have to get the funding and the producer and the director and the actors who want to make that story. But this is King Richard's story. And so that's what this movie is going to be about. And I haven't seen it yet. Maybe I'll watch it. But I think there is something admirable about a guy who was able to push two of his daughters to be some of the greatest female tennis players ever. But I also think that nuance can also be seen in his life. And you can see some of the negative things that he did too. So you can acknowledge his greatness and his failings without ignoring either. But this story is not about his failings. It's about something that he succeeded in. And I don't think it's too much to look at a black man and to look at some of the positive things that he done without putting shade all over him.